It started in my own bed. I was lying there, feeling the soft sheets against my skin. The room was familiar, with moonlight streaming through the window. Everything seemed normal, just like any other night. But then a strange feeling washed over me. It was a feeling of knowing, kind of like a quiet whisper in my mind. I knew this wasn't real. I was dreaming. The realization was gentle, not a sudden shock. It felt like remembering something I had forgotten. I sat up slowly, looking around the room with new eyes. The shadows danced in a way they never did when I was awake. The air itself seemed to hum with a quiet energy, a silent vibration that only I could feel. I decided to test it. This is a key step in lucid dreaming. You have to confirm you are truly in a dream state. I looked at my hands. A classic reality check. They looked strange, a little blurry around the edges. I counted my fingers. There were 6 on one hand. That was all the proof I needed. A smile spread across my face. The whole world of my mind was open to me. I could do anything I wanted. The feeling of freedom was immense, like a bird taking flight for the very first time. I felt a rush of excitement, knowing that an adventure was about to begin. The familiar room was now a launch pad for my imagination. My family was there with me, in the dream. My parents were sitting on the edge of the bed. My sister was standing by the door. They looked just as they always do. They were talking about everyday things like what to have for dinner. I told them, "Hey everyone, we're in a dream." They just looked at me and laughed. My dad said, "Don't be silly, this is real." My mom nodded in agreement, her expression kind but dismissive. They didn't believe me. This is common in lucid dreams. The dream characters often try to convince you that everything is normal. They are reflections of your own subconscious mind. I knew I had to show them. Words were not enough. I needed to do something impossible, something that could only happen in a dream. My family continued their conversation, ignoring my strange announcement. They were completely convinced of their reality. I looked around the room, searching for an idea. My eyes landed on the television set in the corner. It was an old boxy TV, the kind we had when I was a kid. It was turned off, its screen a dark blank slate. An idea sparked in my mind. This would be the perfect way to prove it. I stood up, feeling the dream floor beneath my feet, and walked towards the television with a confident grin. I stood in front of the dark television screen. My family watched me, a little confused. "What are you doing?" my sister asked. I turned to them and said, "Watch this." I took a deep breath. I focused my intention. I wanted to reach into the TV and pull something out. I knew it was possible because this was my dream. I slowly lifted my hand and pushed it towards the screen. I expected to feel hard glass, but there was no resistance. My hand went right through the screen. It felt like pushing my hand through cool, thick jelly. A tingling sensation spread up my arm, a strange and wonderful feeling of breaking the rules of physics. My family gasped. Their eyes were wide with disbelief. They stopped talking and stared at my arm, which was now buried deep inside the television set. Inside, it was not a mess of wires and circuits. It was a space of pure potential, a void filled with swirling colors. I could feel things floating around my hand. I decided to pull out something delicious. I thought about my favorite chocolate cake. I felt my fingers close around something soft and solid. I pulled my hand back out of the screen. In my hand was a perfect slice of rich, dark chocolate cake on a small white plate. The smell of cocoa filled the room. "See?" I said, holding up the cake. "You can't do this in real life." My dad walked over and touched the cake. He looked shocked. "It feels real," he whispered. I then decided to try for something else. I thought about something beautiful and valuable. I reached my hand back into the cool, jelly-like screen. I swirled my hand around in the colorful void. I imagined sparkling jewels like a pirate's treasure. My fingers brushed against something hard and metallic. I grabbed it and pulled it out. It was a long, glittering necklace made of diamonds and sapphires. It sparkled brightly in the dim light of that dream room. My mom took the necklace from my hand. She held it up, and the jewels cast little rainbows on the walls. They were finally convinced. They understood that they were in a dream with me. Their skepticism melted away and was replaced with a sense of wonder and excitement. "What else can we do?" my sister asked, her eyes shining. We had broken the rules of reality together. The TV was no longer just a box for watching stories. It was a portal, a magic hat from which I could pull anything I could imagine. The dream was now a shared adventure, and the possibilities felt truly endless. After the fun with the television, I wanted to explore more. I felt the dream scene starting to become a little unstable. This can happen if you get too excited. The edges of the room began to blur slightly. I knew I needed to stabilize the dream or change the scene. I looked around and saw the bathroom door. I decided to use the mirror inside to travel somewhere new. Mirrors are powerful portals in lucid dreams. They can take you to completely different worlds. I walked into the bathroom. My family followed, curious to see what would happen next. The air in the bathroom felt different, thicker and more still. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. My reflection looked back at me, but it was not quite right. It seemed more solid, more real than I was. It smiled at me with a knowing look. I told my family, I'm going to go through the mirror. They stood back, watching with anticipation. I placed my hands on the surface of the mirror. It was cool to the touch, just like real glass. But as I pushed, it rippled like water. The surface became soft and yielding. I pushed my head and shoulders through. The sensation was incredible. It was like diving into a pool of cool, liquid light. For a moment, I was in between worlds. On the other side, everything was different. I was no longer in my childhood home. I found myself standing in a vast, empty field at twilight. The sky was a beautiful canvas of deep purples and oranges. The air was crisp and cool. I could smell the scent of damp earth and wildflowers. I looked back and saw the mirror standing alone in the field, like a doorway. My family was still on the other side, their faces pressed against the glass, looking out at me. I waved to them, and then the mirror dissolved into shimmering dust, leaving me alone in this new landscape. I was not scared. I felt a profound sense of peace. I took a moment to just be in this new place. I focused on my senses to make the dream more stable and vivid. I ran my hands through the tall grass, feeling its soft texture. I took a deep breath of the clean, fresh air. I looked up at the sky and saw a million stars beginning to appear. The silence was deep and calming. This is one of the joys of lucid dreaming. You can create your own private sanctuary. You can find places of perfect peace and beauty. I knew this scene wouldn't last forever, but for that moment I was content to just stand in the field and watch the stars come out in my own private world. The peaceful field began to change. The beautiful colors in the sky started to fade to a dull, unsettling gray. The soft grass under my feet turned into cold, hard linoleum flooring. The fresh air was replaced by the sterile, medicinal smell of a hospital. Suddenly, I was standing in a long, dimly lit hallway. Doors lined both sides of the corridor. That's when I realized I was in an old nursing home. The atmosphere felt heavy and sad. I could hear the faint sound of someone coughing in a distant room. A feeling of unease crept over me. This was a much darker dream than the one I had just left. I tried to move, but my feet felt like they were glued to the floor. My body felt heavy, almost paralyzed. This is actually a common experience in dreams, and honestly, it can be very frightening. It's related to sleep paralysis, where your mind is awake but your body is still asleep. I remembered to stay calm. Panicking would only make it worse. I knew I was still dreaming, but the feeling of being trapped was very real. So I focused on my breathing, taking slow, deep breaths. I told myself, this is a dream. I am in control. The feeling of being stuck is just a dream sensation, not a real danger. An old woman in a wheelchair slowly rolled out of one of the rooms. Her face was wrinkled and sad. She looked at me with empty eyes. She didn't speak, but I felt a wave of loneliness and despair coming from her. The dream was showing me something about fear and old age. I wanted to leave. I tried to change the scene, to imagine myself back in the beautiful field, but the fear and the heavy atmosphere were making it really difficult to control the dream. The woman in the wheelchair just stared at me, her presence making the hallway feel even colder and more oppressive. I knew I had to escape. I closed my eyes, shutting out the scary scene. I ignored the feeling of being paralyzed. I focused all my energy on a single thought. I want to be somewhere else. I imagined my family's old farm, a place of happy memories. I pictured the green fields, the big red barn, and the warm sunshine. I held that image in my mind with all my strength. Slowly, the cold feeling began to fade. The smell of antiseptic disappeared. I could feel a warm breeze on my skin. When I opened my eyes, the nursing home was gone. I was standing in the bright sunlight, back on the familiar ground of the farm. I was now standing on the land where my family's farm once stood, but it wasn't the farm I remembered from my childhood. This was different. The trees were younger and smaller. The barn looked new, its red paint bright and fresh. I saw people working in the fields. They were wearing old-fashioned clothes, like something from a history book. That's when I realized I had not just changed the location, I had traveled back in time. I was seeing the farm as it was in the 1800s, when my ancestors first lived here. The air was filled with the sounds of farm life, the clucking of chickens, and the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer. I walked closer to the old farmhouse. It was a simple wooden building with a smoking chimney. A man who looked a lot like my great-great-grandfather came out onto the porch. He looked at me with curiosity, but not with fear. In dreams, you can often blend in. I felt a deep connection to this place and this time. It was like seeing my own history come to life. I felt the rough wooden texture of the fence post as I leaned against it. I could smell the wood smoke from the chimney and the rich scent of the earth. It was an incredibly vivid and emotional experience, connecting with my roots in such a direct way. I wanted a souvenir from this time. I wanted to bring something back with me, a small piece of this past. I looked down at the ground. I focused my intention on finding something from that era. I ran my hand through the dirt near the porch steps. My fingers closed around something small, round, and metallic. I pulled it out and brushed off the soil. It was an old coin. It was heavy and worn smooth with time. I could just make out the date on it, 1888. Holding this coin in my hand felt amazing. It was a tangible link to this dream of the past, a symbol of my journey through time. I stayed there for a while, just watching. I watched my ancestors work the land. I saw their simple, hard life, but I also saw their strength and their connection to the earth. It was a powerful lesson. It made me feel grateful for my own life and for the generations that came before me. The lucid dream was not just an adventure, it was a classroom. It was teaching me about my own history and my place in the world. The sun was warm on my face and I felt a sense of belonging, a feeling of being home in a time long before I was born. From the past, my mind decided to jump to the future. The dream shifted again. The old farm dissolved around me. The bright sunlight was replaced by a soft, glowing light that seemed to come from everywhere at once. I was now standing in the same spot, but hundreds of years in the future. The farm was gone. In its place was a beautiful, futuristic city. The buildings were tall and slender, made of a material that looked like glowing glass. They curved gracefully towards the sky. Small, silent vehicles zipped through the air between the buildings. It was a world of clean lines, soft light, and quiet efficiency. The air was perfectly clean and slightly warm. There were plants and trees everywhere, integrated into the architecture of the city. Green parks floated in the air between the buildings. I saw people walking below me on transparent pathways. They wore simple, elegant clothing in shades of white and silver. They looked healthy and calm. There was no noise of traffic or industry. The only sound was a gentle, pleasant humming, like a city breathing. I felt a sense of awe and hope. This was a possible future for humanity, one of peace and harmony with technology and nature. I wanted to interact with this future world. I focused on flying. In a lucid dream, flying is often as simple as deciding to do it. I lifted off the ground and floated gently into the air. I flew between the glowing buildings, looking at the city from above. The feeling was exhilarating. I felt completely free, soaring through this beautiful, silent world. I flew over the floating parks and saw people relaxing and talking. They looked up at me and smiled as if seeing a flying person was a normal, everyday event. There was no fear or surprise, only gentle acceptance. This glimpse into the future was inspiring. It showed me a world created from the best parts of human imagination. It was a world without pollution, without conflict, and without stress. Of course, this was just a dream, a possible future created by my own mind, but it felt like a powerful message. It was a reminder that the future is not set. We can dream of a better world and then work to create it. As I floated high above the glowing city, I felt a renewed sense of optimism for what humanity could achieve. The dream gave me a vision of a beautiful tomorrow to carry back with me into the waking world. If you want to have your own lucid dreams, you can. It is a skill that anyone can learn with practice. The first step is to have a positive mindset. Believe that you can do it. Before you go to sleep, tell yourself, tonight I will remember my dreams, and tonight I will know that I am dreaming. This simple intention can be very powerful. It plants a seed in your subconscious mind. Don't get discouraged if it doesn't happen right away. Just stay positive and keep practicing. Your intention is the most important tool you have. The next step is to use reality checks. This is something you should do many times during the day, not just at night. Ask yourself, am I dreaming right now? Then perform a check. A good one is to try to push your finger through the palm of your other hand. In waking life, it will be solid. But if you do this in a dream, your finger will often pass right through. Another check is to look at a clock or a piece of text, look away, and then look back. In a dream, the time or the words will usually have changed. By doing this often when you are awake, you will build a habit that will carry over into your dreams. Sometimes you might experience sleep paralysis. This is when you wake up but cannot move your body. It can be scary, but remember that it is a natural part of the sleep cycle and it is harmless.